So why should we obey God? How is morality any different from etiquette or fashion? What is coolness? Well, coolness is just things that people like, so that they value it. That whatever popular people happen to like, it thereby becomes cool. If that's the case, then there's nothing inherently true about cool things that gives them their status. Okay, fair enough. And in one sense, that's correct. But what makes morality different from coolness is that it's God who determines the standard of morality, not merely humans. So again, there's this separation of yes, there's persons, and so we're not outside the bounds of our definition of person's value. Persons give value to things or ideas, but God is different than humans, and so the qualities that make up God are important here. So if humans were the final rule in morality, the point would be have more weight. In fact, it's spot on. Of course, this appeal to a difference between God-ordained morality and human-ordained coolness isn't going to impress this person, and she'll doubt whether God can make enough of a difference. And so the real question is this. Here it is. What is it about God that makes him relevantly different from humans? Why should we obey God? Is it because if we weren't, we'd be punished? Okay, or is it because he created us and so has authority over us? I think that's an interesting point. These strike people as less than admirable reasons for doing what God says, and atheists have had a lot of objections to that. So. Anthony here says one does not owe allegiance to another being simply because the being is stronger, and it doesn't matter if the being in question is responsible for your very existence. No one thinks that an absurd abused child is morally obligated to obey abusive parents, and so those are some of the things that we see. And so we shouldn't follow God just because he created us. So, what's the point of following God? Why should we?
That's her objection, right?
Yeah.
All right, fine. So he created you. So what? Does that mean that you have to do everything he says, right?
Yeah.
Or he is stronger than you.
Yeah.
So that means whatever he tells you to do.
Give the bully the lunch money.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, yes, there is some points to be made here. And so this is why we always have to be careful with our definitions and our argumentation. Obligations aren't simply things we just have to, but are moral and therefore person-dependent on Dr. Stokes' account. Most theists, or at least many that I know, aren't motivated primarily because God is stronger, nor even simply because he created them. They obey God because they want to. On the other hand, God's authority and power are nothing to sneeze at because God is in charge of the cosmological establishment. He can be its lawgiver. And I think that's very important here to, when we talk about question of authority and things like coolness, we're defining a group of people who think that's cool. And maybe it's just you. Well, I think it's cool.
Right.
And therefore you put yourself as an authority of whatever coolness factor is, or you say a lot of people think beards are cool, and so, well, okay, are you putting that in the reform camp? And if you don't have a beard, you can't be reformed, or are you putting that in kind of the yuppie hipster movement? And so hipsters think beards are cool, and so therefore it's again person dependent. It's not so it's technically maybe what might makes right, but God's infinite power is certainly one of those things that sets him apart from human lawgivers. And so when we talk about the law doesn't make things moral, well, yeah, that's very true.
Right.
However, if you have perfect people that can determine everything that could come about and all of the objections raised, and determine if when a law should come into an account, then there's way more value in that law than just an arbitrary, we're responding to terrorist attack, and so we need the Patriot Act to come in to be able to spy on you to help protect you. Well, what if we had that maybe, 6 months before 9/11? Would that have solved anything? I'm not trying to make that argument here or there, but if you have people that see the history from above it, if they're not involved in it, if they're not human and don't have a physical spot in the universe, then there's more to the argument than just it's just arbitrary. God is different than humans. So this is one reason why atheists find God so distasteful. They can see him as an overbearing authoritarian dictator.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So he just tells us he bosses us around. He's a dictator, right?
Right.
We have to do it.
Yeah. Jeez. But most theists see it differently, viewing God as a loving father who cares for them and as someone they can trust, despite not fully understanding why he is doing the things that he does.
Right. So there's a distinction here between dictator and a loving father.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, we do want to follow and obey a loving father. I mean, we have to follow a dictator, right?
Right.
But we want to follow a loving father.
Right.
Right.
I know this more now than ever being a father myself. Don't sit on the couch like that. Oh, I'm just being overbearing. That's what my daughter thinks. And so I have to bring her over and I say, no, if you fall backwards, you're going to really, hurt yourself.
Yeah.
And so there's an explanation there that I'm giving that says I'm doing this command, not because it's arbitrary, but because I was there, or I can see the bad outcome. You're not stable enough. I need you to grow up a little bit more. And so I'm giving you this command to do it. And then I'm explaining the reason for it. So I'm doing it because I love my children.
Right. So God doesn't do it because we don't obey necessarily because of punishment and that sort of thing, right? There's other motives, right?
And so rather than obey often enough because that children love their parents, because they love their parents, feel loved by them, are grateful for the care and comfort that parents provide. There's a sense of loyalty, belonging. All these things is what Christianity talks about, being sons and daughters and the children of God. This is the same type of language that Christians use.
Right. So her objection was that, well, hey, the only reason why you're obeying God is because he's a bully and you're fearful
or
of
he's
punishment.
Abusing you.
Right. Yeah. Or the only reason why you obey God is because, well, he created you. Well, just because parents, have offspring, that doesn't necessarily mean. And he says, no, those are not necessarily the reasons, at least for the Christian, right? We obey God because he loves you and you love God. Right? There's a relationship there, right? A parent and child type of relationship. Parents obey their parents, or children obey their parents because they love them, or at least, as they get older, they do. We would hope, right?
They rebel just as we rebel against God. But the bottom line is this: we obey God because we want to, and we want to because we value certain things. And thankfully, God can influence our values. Again, I write my law upon their hearts, and I change their hearts from a heart of stone into a heart of flesh. We are being given a divine sense, a renewed change in our value. That's what Christians have been saying about salvation is my values for my sin, myself, how I look at the world, completely changed once I became a Christ follower, and there's a divine influence there that Christians claim occurs, and so then it's a sanctification process is what we call it, a continuation of changing and growing and understanding, just like a child does as they grow older and we rebel and we still have our, don't bite your fingernails, please. I've told that so many times. Well, why is that? Because I don't want your fingers to get hurt, but you keep doing it because it's a bad habit, and so it's not a perfecting thing, because it's not a complete overriding of who we are, because God values us. Little sermon there. So God absolutely must influence our values before we want to obey him, before we value the things he values through regeneration, sanctification. God is said to change our hearts, to change what we value. In this case of Christianity, God values are becoming our values. Morality requires persons, and now we come up to a further objection here.
Yeah.